Tonight's inductee for the spring season graduated from Lourdes in 1996. He was a 4-year letterman on the Lourdes varsity baseball team, earning HBL All-Conference honors in 1994, 1995, and 1996. In 1994, his pitching and hitting led the team to a Minnesota State High School League Consolation Championship. In 1996, he was named Section 1A Tournament MVP and was named to the State All-Tournament Team and All-State First Team as he led Lourdes to its Minnesota State High School League Baseball State Championship. That year, he was also the winning pitcher in the Lions All-Star Game. He is currently the Lourdes all-time leader in games played, at-bats, hits, RBIs, where he is currently 3rd all-time in the state, walks, games pitched, innings pitched, and strikeouts as a pitcher, and also holds many single-season records as well. In addition to baseball, he led 3 years in basketball, where he was HBL All-Conference Team MVP in both his junior and senior year. In 1996, he was named the Athlete of the Season for both winter in basketball and spring in baseball. The summer following graduation, he led the Rochester A's to the American Legion State Championship and was also named the tournament MVP. He first attended the Des Moines Community College, a well-known baseball power, where he lettered for 2 years and then finished his college career at Iowa State University, lettering there for 2 years as well. In 1999, he was named to the Big 12 Academic All-Conference First Team. He played 10 summers of baseball back in Rochester with the Rochester Royals amateur team and led them to a Minnesota Amateur State Championship in 2006, where, once again, he was named tournament MVP.
When I first got the call saying I was going to be inducted into the Lourdes Athletics Hall of Fame, I was really surprised at how excited I was. After all, we're talking about things that happened 20 years ago in my case, and hundreds of miles away from where I currently live, and yet it's really hard to articulate just how much of an honor it is, and I'm sure the other guys are the people who understand what I'm talking about. And since that's the case, I'm really happy that my family's with me tonight, especially my wife, Ann, who's a 97 grad of Lourdes and a very good athlete in her own right. And my daughters, Maya and Lily, who you may have seen up here just a few minutes ago as I pulled out the names from the hat. So they didn't want to come. We made them. I'm hoping that at some point in their lives they'll be like, I'm kind of glad I went to that. Right now we're at a point where Dad's no longer cool. I also have a lot of more family and friends here, and I hope they'll forgive me if I just say a general thank you to anybody who has been supportive of me or been there for me at any time, because there's so many in particular that I really want to talk about tonight, and that's my dad. So unfortunately, we lost my dad about 2 years ago, and I really wish he could be here. Because I think that he, more than anybody else, is why I'm here. And I'll tell you why in just a minute, but first I would like to tell you a little story about him. And for my family and friends, it may be a retelling, but it's one of my favorite stories about him, and since it's a sports crowd, I think it's might get a decent appreciation here. It started when I was working in TV here in town, and I would have 2 press passes to Vikings games and only one of me. And so I needed somebody just to go and hold the microphone in the locker room after the games. And so I would invite people that I knew would enjoy the experience, and also people that I wanted to hang out with. So of course the first person I invited was my dad. And I don't remember anything about the game. I don't remember who they played. I don't remember if they won. What I do remember is periodically checking on my dad up in the press box. And I was down on the field, I had the camera, I'd zoom up, and the first time I looked up there, he seemed to be happy, enjoying the game, eating a hot dog. Next time, a little while later, I checked on him, and he was happy, enjoying the game, eating an ice cream sandwich. Third time, he was happy, enjoying the game, and eating a brat. I think he might have gone back to hot dogs after that, but I didn't really check any more times. Suffice to say, he picked up on the perks of the press box really quickly. As, to use one of his own phrases, he was no dummy. And after the game, he came down field level. We went into the locker room. And I said, Dad, here's a wireless mic. We're going to go up to guys, try to get it close so we can understand what they're saying. That's all there is to it. It's really not brain surgery. So we go in there and somebody asked Randy Moss a question and he answered, which didn't always happen. And as soon as that happened, inevitably, a big flock of reporters swarmed over to him. And I wanted to get in on that action. And so I look at my dad, make a little eye contact, and nod, head over to Randy Moss. I need to stop here real quick because a lot of you who played sports know that a lot of information can be relayed through some quick eye contact and a nod. And especially this was true for my dad and I think it goes back to the fact that in 7th grade, I took a year off traveling basketball, and my dad and I traveled around the state playing racquetball tournaments. And it was great fun. We went to the dirtiest, dingiest motels you've ever seen, and we ordered pizza, and we watched ball games, and it was great. In the mornings we'd go and play singles and also doubles. So for anybody who doesn't know what doubles racquetball is like, you've got what feels like an extremely confined space with 4 fully grown individuals swinging these sharp objects wildly. It's not a safe endeavor. So in order to survive that, you need to be able to transmit a lot of communication to each other very quickly. And so my dad got very good, my dad and I, at just giving brief little looks, and then we were good to go. So fast forward back to the Vikings locker room where I gave him that look, and I go over to Randy Moss and I get the camera ready, I white balance real quick, I focus, I put it on my shoulder, I start recording, and immediately something just isn't quite right. It's not right. I can't really explain it because I really wanted to make sure I got this interview, and so I didn't think about it too much. But it was this persistent feeling that something wasn't quite right. So I eventually backed up from the group of reporters, and I rewound the tape, and I played it again. And sure enough, Randy Moss's mouth and the words that I hear are not matching up. Something's wrong. So I looked at my dad. He's nowhere by Randy Moss. And I started looking around the locker room, and I can't find him anywhere. And so I look in the far corner, the last locker. My dad is kneeling down, wireless mic extended, having a one-on-one conversation with future Hall of Fame wide receiver Chris Carter. No clue. Apparently, you need the microphone and the camera to be on the same person. So I go over to him, I'm going to be like, Dad, what are you doing? But I get over there and I see the look on his face. And it's equal parts pure joy, just having the time of his life. And also this look of stern concentration, like I am not screwing this up for my son. So I didn't have the heart to tell him that it's not going to work. Instead, I just threw the camera back on my shoulder, pushed record, gave him a little thumbs up, and off we went. So that's always been one of my favorite stories about my dad, but not the reason that I say he's the most important thing, or the most influential person in my being here. For that, I think it's because he taught me this lesson that I've come to think of as the never going to get there lesson. And it started with backyard pop-ups. So, like a lot of fathers and sons, when I was about the age of my daughters back here, maybe a little bit younger, my dad would start coming home from work and we'd play catch. And after a while, it's not that catch was boring, he would always like to make things a little bit more interesting, and so he started throwing me pop-ups. And that became our way of playing catch. And so he would throw me a pop-up, and I'd catch it. And he'd throw me another pop-up, and I'd catch it. And I'd start to build a little bit of confidence. And once that happened, he'd throw me a pop-up that I had to move for. And if I caught that one, he'd throw one that I had to move farther for. And farther, until finally he would throw me that one pop-up that was almost impossible for me to get to, and he'd say, never going to get there. And over the course of the next several years, really throughout my childhood, I heard those words, never going to get there, a lot. But here's the thing about never going to get there pop-ups. Sometimes I got there. And sometimes I made the catch. And I realized that what my dad was doing is he was throwing these pop-ups. He was saying never going to get there, and then he was putting it in a spot where I had a chance to get there. And eventually I learned that those words, never going to get there, didn't actually mean never going to get there at all. They actually meant you have a chance to get there. You just might have to work a little harder. And you just might have to put in a little more effort. And then if you do actually get there, it's going to be more rewarding precisely because of the fact that you had to put in the more extra effort. Not in spite of it, but because of it, because it was harder. And that's the never going to get there lesson. And I learned that lesson really early. It was probably subconscious at first, but I know that I learned it because as I look back at all the times that I competed growing up, whether it be one-on-one basketball against Kyle in the driveway or more of an organized team sport, I never wanted an unfair advantage in any situation. In fact, a lot of times I wanted an unfair disadvantage because I had learned that if I tried really hard, I might be able to overcome that disadvantage and I might be able to win. And if I did, it would be more rewarding because of the fact that I had started with a disadvantage. So I know that I knew that lesson when I was young. And then as I grew older, it somehow solidified in me and it became something that I was cognizant of, something that I thought about a lot. And even now, it's something that I think about a lot as I strive to reach my goals today. But the reason I'm telling you about it here and tonight is because that lesson, never going to get there lesson, was a huge influencer of my success in high school athletics. I think that anybody who has ever played sports, any sport, at any level, has come across a situation where they realize they are completely overmatched. And they're just overwhelmed. They're not as good as the person they're going to play against. It happens to everybody. And inevitably, in that moment, a little voice comes into your head and it says those two terrible words, I can't. And then, of course, you can't. Because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And as soon as those two words enter your mind, you're done. But it was never like that for me. Because every time I ran into one of those situations where I was completely overmatched, and every time that voice came into my head and said, I can't, I had another voice. It was a louder voice, fostered by my dad, and it said, but what if I can? But what if that voice that says I can't is lying? Or what if it's just wrong? And the answer to those questions was, is, and always will be, then I just might get there. I just might win. Not always. Everybody's going to experience failure, and everybody's going to lose. And I've had a lot of both. But the power of the never going to get there lesson is not that it has made me universally successful in every situation I've ever encountered. That's obviously impossible. But in teaching me that lesson, my dad did something really powerful. He took those two words, I can't, these two words that can debilitate a person and shut them down, freeze them up, make them quit before they even try. He took those words and he rendered them meaningless in my mind. He stripped them of all their power. And in doing so, he opened the door for me to be successful, even in situations where success would have otherwise seemed impossible. And that is the power of the never going to get there lesson. And that is why I feel indebted to my dad tonight. So now I'm the dad, and I've got my girls here. And I think a lot about the lessons I'm going to teach them and the things I'm going to say to them that I want them to remember. And so, girls, if you guys never remember me saying, clean your room, do your homework, practice piano, that's all right. That's actually what I would prefer. Because they're the important things that I want you to remember. And the first one, of course, is that I love you, and I always will be there when you need me, no matter what happens in your life. But the second is that I think you do well to remember Grandpa's never going to get there rule. And when you face situations where you hear that voice in your head that says, I can't, don't believe it. And so for throwing me all those backyard pop-ups and teaching me the never going to get there lesson, and for so many other things, I'd like to dedicate this honor of being inducted into the Lourdes Athletics Hall of Fame to John Siple, my dad.